If you've ever looked in the mirror and thought, I'm doing the steps, but why doesn't this look classical? This video is for you because most of the adult dancers I work with aren't lacking effort or musicality, and they're definitely not bad movers. But I often hear from them that they're not happy with their lines and they feel like they just don't look as classical as they could. A huge mistake many dancers make is thinking that their lines are about flexibility, turnout range, or pushing their leg even higher in their extensions. It definitely isn't. Classical lines are built from fundamentals. And today, I want to give you the blueprint that you can take straight into class without overthinking, overcorrecting, or chasing shapes that your body can't actually organize. So here's the first reframe. Your line is not just a pose. It's not a frozen shape. It's the result of how energy moves through your body as you're dancing. Classical line is continuity, organization, and intention, all the way coming up from the floor, through the leg, through the pelvis, into the torso, and eventually through how you hold your arms and your head. And if one link in that chain isn't working, the whole line looks off. So instead of asking, why doesn't my line look right? We need to ask, what's breaking down before I even get there? And that's where plié and tendu come in. Plié isn't just a preparation. It's actually technique. And every classical line depends on how well you organize your body while your knees are bending and stretching in that first combination at the bar. In a good plié, your femur is rotating back into the socket. Your pelvis is staying responsive, not frozen, and your spine is staying long without getting stuck. We're feeling a float both down and up throughout the entire movement. If your plié collapses, gets stuck, jams, feels heavy, your lines will always look segmented. Think of the energy working in four directions. From your torso upwards towards the top of your head, you feel an energy going up. From your hips down, you feel the energy spiraling into the ground. In doing that, we're going to have our energy working in two directions, up and down, as well as spiraling outwards away from our center line as we dance. It's the integration of these directions and spirals through our movement that is going to make our classical ballet not about holding still, but about controlled movement through space. Better lines are going to be built in your tendu. Once you've found the rotation and established the directions and the energy of your body in your plié, that tendu is going to be how you develop the classical line of your legs. It's not about height. It's not even really about speed in the beginning. It's about clarity. In a tendu, your legs move because of the organization of your hips that you developed in your plié. The foot then articulates through our demi-point, and it's a continuation of that energy from the hip extended through the toe that creates the artistic line that we're trying to make. The foot articulates as a continuation of the leg, not a separate action. And the standing side stays alive. You see, this is where turnout actually shows itself. While this side may be doing the work extending away from the body, the same energy is working through our standing leg, rotating in the opposite direction to what our gesturing leg is doing in the tendu. It's not a forced angle, but it's a spiral that travels from the hip through the thigh into the foot. And as your foot caresses the floor, that's what gives us the connection to our grounding in our movement. One challenge that many adult dancers face is the alignment of their ankle in the tendu. Many dancers will find themselves in this position where the heel is dropping down towards the floor instead of in this position where the heel is pushing forward. This comes from how we train and how we start our tendu movement. If we think about the plié as a spiral and the rotation into that plié creating extra rotation, maintaining that rotation then allows us to continue by pushing our heel forward as we start our tendu. When the heel pushes forward, we are able to then work through our demi-point. Once we get there, we have to continue to push the heel forward until our toes point as far as they can, and then return by reversing the action, toes coming back as we close back into our position. Every time we then move our leg to the front, we start with that same articulation because that's what develops the line of the leg in our devant alignment. If you're starting like this, or even if you start correctly but close this way, you're going to lose the articulation of the leg, and then the classical line is going to disappear. All of that being said, let's dive into the feet briefly, but honestly. Your foot is not just decorative. It's not just a pretty point at the end of an extended line. How you use your foot can actually be communicative. Look at these two tombé pas de bras versus That slight coup de pied movement, articulation of the foot, completely changed the classical intention of the movement. When you use your feet correctly and articulate them beautifully, it's communicative. You see, a classical line needs clear articulation, intelligent eversion or winging, and a foot that responds to turnout instead of faking it. Responding to turnout means that your turnout is not coming from your feet, but is developing in the hip and then continuing through the foot. When you organize your turnout at the hip, the foot can articulate clearly because you started from the strongest point and worked that spiral downwards. When turnout is forced, the foot compensates and the line loses integrity. And this is why height is not always so important when it comes to classical lines. If you think the leg is going up and up and up and up and up, but you can't control it, you can't maintain rotation, and you can't continue the energy all the way to the end, potentially your leg will look more beautiful here than it will up here. Not because it's smaller, but because it's honest. I'll often tell my dancers that ballet is kind of like watching a duck swim across the pond. Now, before you laugh at me, let me explain. When you watch a duck swim across the pond, their upper body floating on top of the water looks beautiful. They look completely at ease as if they just glide across that surface. If you were to go under the water, suddenly you'll see those little legs working like this the whole time, going crazy and never stopping. As dancers, we do the same thing. Our upper body has to be poised, controlled, and seem effortless, while our legs do all kinds of different things to keep the audience interested. That being said, your upper body, the classical upper body, is not a shape that you hold. It's a placement you maintain while moving. If your ribs are braced and you're stuck and you're holding everything, pressing down, creating tension, your line is going to die. When your shoulders are pinned, your line looks tense. And if your head is just placed instead of responsive, the whole thing feels staged. You see, classical épaulement, or the alignment of the shoulders and the head in relation to what your movement is, developed because of the stage that we would perform on. Originally, there were boxes in this corner and this corner, and so our alignment was developed to present to those two corners. If you're not using your body to create cross or shading, potentially your line is not going to look as classical as it could. And one of the biggest mistakes I see dancers do is do everything en face without changing the line of their upper body. This can get very confusing, but for adult dancers, it's part of the reason why you feel stiff or like your lines aren't classical enough. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're focusing on so many things at once and you're locking your body into one position instead of allowing it to adapt to the movement that you're creating. Now, this part matters more than most people realize. A classical line isn't just physical, it's perceptual. You have to develop your eye, but you also have to understand a lot of what we do in dance is a little bit of an illusion. For example, if I do a tendu arabesque in effacé and I place myself here, from your perspective, everything looks correct. However, if I now turn, you can see that my sidearm is very far forward. If I were to place a second position arm where it technically should be, now I look too open, my arm looks behind me, and the position doesn't read from the front. Developing your eye for aesthetic doesn't happen on accident. Historically, dancers learn this by watching class, watching rehearsals, watching performances of their peers, and spending hours exposed to classical movement done well. Today, most dancers are only seeing short clips, extreme shapes, and algorithm-driven technique highlights that train your eye towards exaggeration, not classicism. But developing aesthetic judgment and an understanding of how your body can create those lines takes time. It means watching full-length ballets, slowing movement down mentally, noticing transitions, and not just the final position that we're trying to get to. As we watch, we want to be asking why something looks calm, grounded, or inevitable. This is why I'll often ask my dancers in a fondu to work at a lower 45-degree position so that they're not trying to overextend and achieve something they can't control. Working in this lower range allows you the time and the ability to control the classical line you're creating because classical style isn't rushed and neither is learning to organize it. So let's break this down in a way that makes sense from a fundamental perspective. Your first movement at the bar, your plié, the combination that establishes your rotation, is where you're going to make the first connection between your head, your arm, and the rotation in your legs. You're then going to carry that coordination with you through everything that you do. If you're taking your class and you're finding your head is just staying to the front the whole time, or only just kind of looking at yourself in the mirror, you're missing part of that classical development. Understand that it's not about how much turnout you have, because even historically, they only started with 45 degrees in their feet. Turnout was not necessarily about being flat and open. It was about stability and being able to move with opposition through the body. Modern classical technique has asked for a more defined, flatter turnout, but that's only to present the heel more forward with a nicer alignment of the foot and to allow for cleaner alignment of your legs for things like batu and other developments in the center. Establishing your head in coordination with your upper body, for example, having the line from my chin to the top of my head, my sternum to my shoulder, and my hip to my foot match in my tendu, as opposed to being closed off and shut down and just stretched, is going to create a stronger impression for your audience. Taking that with you into the center, if you're not using your angles, your corners, your diagonals across the room, then your classical technique is going to look flat and one-dimensional. Take this simple shift, for example. If I do a tendu devant, but I'm not fully croisé, look how short my leg looks, as opposed to when I turn myself just a little bit to create a longer, more defined leg line. I don't have to stretch my knee any farther. I don't even have to point my foot more. I just have to shift my angle a few degrees more towards the corner that I'm dancing towards. And to be clear, this isn't about the corner of the room, but the corner of the imaginary box that you stand within. See, when we think about classicism and classical aesthetic, it's all based on angles and perception within those angles of the people that are viewing you from the outside. Think about a painting, for example. When you look at a painting, a classical painting, a very well-defined, like from the Dutch masters, are you ever going to see their shoulders at one straight line across, body facing to the front? No. They're always turned away and either angled down or angled up to create dimension and interest for the viewer. This way we can play with light and shade and create a classical aesthetic of our choosing. And of course, in the end, what it all comes down to is your ability to draw the viewer's eye where you want them to look. If I'm here and I'm going this way, you're going to be looking out to where my foot is pointing. But if I'm over here like this, you may be spending more time looking at my upper body. So if you're starting to feel like your classwork is very technically competent, but your lines aren't feeling classical, break it back down to how well you're coordinating, how well you're using your upper body, whether you're articulating and spiraling your legs in opposition, and then make sure that you're refining with your pliés, your tendus, your honest turnout, and then connecting that with your épaulement in the center. Remember, guys, patient observation is where development comes from. One focus at a time, one layer at a time. That's how classical lines are built. And of course, remember to practice for many years.